rank all of the weapons in Free Fire from worst to best, starting with the melee weapons. First off, we've got the bat in the F tier. If the bat's the only weapon, yeah, you can pick it up because it's better than your fists, I guess, but otherwise just don't because it's pretty terrible. Then we got the machete, and that's going to be in the C tier. Now the machete does have a shield trait, meaning that there is a chance of it blocking a shot, so it's not terrible, but there are better shields that you can use for your melee weapons. The scythe is also in the C tier. Now the scythe does not have a shield trait, but it does the most damage out of the melee weapon, so if you need to attack with the actual melee weapon, the scythe is really good at that. Up next, we have the katanas in the B tier. Now the katanas do have a shield trait, and it says that the movement speed is the same for the katanas. However, I would claim that it somehow makes you faster. Maybe I'm just making it up, but that's what it seems like to me. But the best melee weapon has got to be the pan, going in the A tier. The pan is the best shield out of all the melee weapons, and I know that like an A tier pan is not going to be good as an A tier like actual gun, but you're always going to have at least one melee weapon, so I feel like this is the best one. By the way, this video was made in collaboration with Full Frontage. He has a much better understanding of the weapons in Free Fire than I do, so you know this video is actually accurate. Click on the link in the description below to check out his Free Fire channel. Up next, we got the launchers, starting with the M79 and the MGL140, both in the F tier. Both the M79 and the MGL140 honestly should just never be a priority, okay? Now, obviously, they're grenade launchers, so they're gonna do a lot of damage in a big area, but it's not usually worth a weapon slot, especially in solo matches. We do have the RGS-50 in the C tier. Again, launchers are never priority. Like, maybe if you're playing in a squad and you have a specific team, then you could do that. But the RGS has a much longer range than the other launchers, which makes it easier to destroy enemy glue walls, which is possibly one reason why you might want to use it. Up next, we've got the bows, which is the crossbow, and we're just gonna ignore that. Next are grenades. Honestly, glue walls, grenades, and your flash freezes are all incredibly useful. The thing is with them, we're gonna put glue walls in the A tier, and then grenades and flash freezes in the B tier. Honestly, you wanna prioritize having these like as much as you can. If you can carry 4 to 8 walls, do it. Flash freezes you can only hold one at a time, and grenades are kind of like the same as glue walls. It's never gonna hurt to have them, but it could hurt if you didn't have them. Okay, next up we got pistols. Both in the F tier, we've got the USP2 and the M1917. Now these two are just standard pistols, and they are by far the worst. You're always gonna have some sort of a pistol on you, and pretty much every other one is gonna be a better option, including the hand cannon, which is gonna be in the C tier. The hand cannon has a really small range, but it does do a lot of damage. This is technically a secondary weapon, meaning that it's not taking up the pistol slot, so you never know, you might end up using it. Next is the G18, also in the C tier. This has a decent sized clip, and it shoots really fast. So if you're accurate, you can actually get quite a bit of damage, but it's only really good at close range. Then we have the standard USP, which is better than USP2. It's going in the C tier because it does actually help you move quicker while holding it, unlike other pistols, and it has a quick reload speed, so it's not terrible, it's just not a high priority. Then we have the M500 also going in the C tier. This comes with a 2x scope, so it's actually really good early game if you're accurate, and in a recent update, the further you are away, the less headshot damage that you do with it, so keep that in mind. Now we've got our first B tier pistol, the Mini Uzi. This is a good rate of fire, and it lets you move quickly, but that's pretty much it. If you hit your shots with it, it's a pretty good gun. Coming in the A tier, we have the flamethrower. This thing is crazy at close range. It has a high armor penetration and is very good against vehicles, walls, and obviously humans. We also have the M1873 going in the A tier. Now this is a secondary weapon, but it does a lot of damage at close range, and it has a little bit of bonus to your movement speed, which can be helpful in close quarters. But the best pistol, and going into the S tier, is the Desert Eagle. If your opponent doesn't have a helmet, this can one-shot them, and it has a long range, does a good amount of damage, and that means this is a really good early game gun, and can even hold its own as the match progresses. Next, we have the light machine guns, or LMGs, and this is where things get interesting. Some of these weapons have X, Y, or Z modifiers, which are pretty much upgraded versions of the guns that you can find in like vending machines and other special drops. Usually, if you have an X, Y, or Z model, you're gonna want to go with that gun, but that's not always the case. Starting is the M60 in the C tier. This is the worst of the light machine guns, so just don't use it. But the M60Y is definitely a B tier gun. The Y version of this has more damage, and when you're in machine gun mode, or like you're crouched or prone, this has a higher firing rate, which makes it a very reliable choice while you're still holding those 60 rounds. Also in the B tier, we have the Cord. This has a pretty solid range, and with 80 rounds, it's actually a pretty good option. It's just definitely not a must-have. In the A tier, we have the M249. This is only only available in airdrops, and it has 100 rounds in a clip. It has a really high rate of fire and really good range, and as long as you're not too bad at aiming, there's pretty much no way you can't kill someone with this gun. But the M249X is even better in the S tier. The X version of this was added in a recent update and gave the M249 a 5% damage buff and a 12% rate of fire buff, making it like, it's insane. Next, we got my favorite, the snipers. Starting with the Kar98K in the C tier. This is by far the worst of the snipers. It has a really slow reload speed, and all of its other stats are pretty just mediocre. But the Z version of the Kar98K is actually an A tier sniper. This adds a biometric scope, which increases your accuracy when you're scoped in. Then we have the treatment sniper in the B tier. This is pretty much as good as the Kar98K, but if you shoot an ally, you'll actually heal them, making this a pretty decent pickup if you're playing duos or squads. The AWM is going in the B tier. This is a tier above the Kar because of the attachments that you can add, like a magazine to increase how many rounds that it holds. Other than that, it's not that much better. But the AWM-Y is and is going in the A tier. This modified version gives you extra armor penetration, making it an amazing sniper rifle. But the best sniper rifle has got to be the M82B. This does additional damage to vehicles and glue walls and can penetrate through glue walls as well, not to mention the fact that it has good armor penetration against enemies wearing armor. Definitely a top tier weapon if you can get your hands on it. Up next are the Marksman rifles. Starting off is the SKS in the B tier. Now this comes with a 4x scope and has armor penetration, and it has pretty good range, but it does the least amount of damage out of the Marksman rifles. Also in the B tier we have the SVD. Now this does the most damage and has armor penetration out of the Marksman rifles, but it's only found at resupply points and airdrops, so it's going to be a little bit tricky to find. But the Y version of it is an A tier weapon. This modified version will add penetration to glue walls, making this actually a really strong contender for the next weapon, the Woodpecker, which is also an A tier weapon. This is really solid because of its higher damage and armor penetration, and it has a pretty good rate of fire and accuracy as well. If you want a higher rate of fire, go with the Woodpecker, but if you need more armor piercing, go with the SVD-Y. Finally, we have the AC-80, also in the A tier. Now this gives you less armor penetration and damage than the Woodpecker, but it has a higher range and a faster movement speed. Plus, 2 continuous shots will trigger additional damage, making this a pretty solid mid to long range weapon. Up next are the shotguns. First up is the Mag 7, starting off in the B tier. This has a really good rate of fire, but has the lowest damage out of all the shotguns. Next is the SPAS-12 in the B tier. Honestly, this is actually a really good shotgun, and it deals amazing damage if you're not worried about missing, because it only has a single shot, which is a fairly big drawback, which is why it's only in the B tier. Next is the Charge Buster, which is a B tier shotgun. This is actually the newest shotgun in the game and came out in one of the recent updates. Holding the fire button actually increases the range of it, but it reduces its spread and damage. It's overall a pretty decent shotgun, but there are 2 other shotguns that are higher priority unless you're playing squads, in which case somebody should probably grab a Charge Buster. Next is the M1014 going in the A tier. This shotgun does a lot of damage, but it doesn't have a ton of range. Still though, this is the second best shotgun in the game. But the best is the M1887. If you play a lot of close range matches, this is an amazing weapon to have on you. It has a longer range than an M1014, and the damage of this is just insane. Next to the submachine guns, or the SMGs. Starting us off is the Vector, which is a C tier weapon. Now, interestingly enough, the Vector is actually the only weapon in the game that you can hold 2 of and shoot them both at the same time. It has a really high rate of fire, so if you find 2, it can be pretty strong, just not quite as good as the other SMGs. Next is the CG-15, which is also going in the C tier. This has the longest range out of all of the SMGs, but it's really not that strong, and honestly, you're probably just better off getting a Marksman rifle instead. The MP5 is also going into the C tier. It recently got a range nerf, and the headshot damage was also reduced at long range. The rate of fire and the reload speed are very high, but it's not as good compared to other SMGs. The MP5X, however, is actually really solid and it's going in the A tier. This X version shoots faster and penetrates armor better, and if you already have a long range weapon, this is a pretty good SMG to hold on to. Next is the MAC-10, which is B tier. This is a pretty balanced SMG. It has higher rate of fire and movement speed, but it does come with a silencer, making it a higher B tier priority, but not quite an A tier weapon. The MP40 is also a B tier weapon. It has really good stability and a higher rate of fire, which makes it a really solid choice. Honestly, it's kind of on the verge of A tier, but its short range and lower damage kind of holds it back a little bit. The P90 is also in the B tier. This fires super fast, it has a really large clip, but it has lower damage, which kind of offsets it. Next is the Thompson, also in the B tier. It's got a high rate of fire and an average amount of damage, but it also has 42 rounds, which actually makes it pretty solid so that you don't have to reload as frequently. Next, we have the VSS in the B tier. This comes silenced and actually has pretty long range, but it does lower damage compared to like a Marksman rifle, so keep that in mind. The VSS-X is an upgraded version in the A tier. This modified version does poison damage, making it a really solid choice over some of like the base options compared to like a Marksman rifle. Finally, we have the UMP, which is an A tier weapon. Now this can hold every attachment, which makes it even better better over time. It has a high reload speed and allows you to move really quickly while it's equipped. Plus, this has strong stability and probably one of the best beginner-friendly guns in the game, so definitely grab this SMG if you come across it, especially if you're like me. I'll take every beginner-friendly weapon that I can get. Once again, a reminder that this tier list was made in collaboration with Full Frontage, who is much better at the game than I am. Finally, we've got the assault rifles. Starting off in the C tier is the Parafal. This has good range, good damage. It's just pretty average in compared to a lot of the assault rifles. Next is Plasma, also going in the C tier. Now, this gun doesn't actually require ammo, but it can heat up, meaning that once it hits 100%, you can't shoot it anymore. It does good damage, but if you miss your shots, it kind of struggles once you hit that 100% mark. The Plasma Y is going into the B tier. This version has a faster firing rate, which does make it better and a little bit more forgiving if you miss a couple of shots. Next, we have the M4A1 starting in the C tier, the M4A1X in the B tier, the M4A1Y in the A tier, and the M4A1Z in the S tier. The M4A1 at its base level is like good. It's your average run-of-the-mill AR, but when you get upgraded versions, it's even better. You get upgrades in damage, range, rate of fire. Pretty much every possible way is going to make this gun like the ultimate weapon. If you can find a fully upgraded Z version at a vending machine, absolutely go for this. Next, we have the AUG, which is going into the B tier. This is a pretty average AR that comes with a scope, so that's kind of nice. The M14 is also going in the B tier. High damage, high range, average accuracy. It's kind of more like a sniper, but like if you wanted a sniper, you would actually go with a sniper rifle instead. The M14Y is a slightly upgraded version, is in the A tier. This makes the gun shoot automatic, so you don't have to just like keep on tapping. You can just hold your fire and it's going to repeatedly shoot out. If you're able to upgrade this, this is definitely not a bad option. The AN94 is also going into the B tier. It's got long range, a good rate of fire, but it does recoil quite a bit, so you need really good control to be accurate with this. The AK is also going in the B tier. It has higher damage, good range, good rate of fire, but it is very difficult to control as well. Next, we have the FAMAS, which is a B tier weapon. This is a triple burst gun, and it's actually pretty accurate and has a pretty good long range. But the FAMAS X is a slightly upgraded version that's even better. This does heavy damage and penetrates armor, and if you tie this with the accuracy and the long range of a FAMAS, it's actually a really good gun. Next, we have the XM8, which is an A tier weapon. This comes with a 2x scope, has really good accuracy. It's a super friendly beginner gun because it's really good at shooting at long ranges. We also have the SCAR in the A tier. This is even more friendly for beginners than the XM8, but it doesn't come with a 2x scope. That said, it's got good range, good damage, good accuracy, carries more rounds in a clip than the XM8, which is really a solid reason to use it, especially for beginners, because then you don't even have to bother with swapping back and forth between the scope. Next, we have the Kingfisher in the A tier. This has a really good rate of fire and lets you move quicker in comparison to other ARs. This also has a scope and can burst down people pretty easily, which is it's a really solid weapon. But in the S tier, we have the Groza. This is easily the strongest AR in the game, and it has incredible range for an AR, does high damage. I mean, this is just insane. Do not pass this gun up if you have an opportunity to get it, unless it's for the Groza X. If there was an S plus tier, I would absolutely put this here, okay? The X version gives 10% more damage and is a new weapon from one of the most recent updates. And there you have it, the weapon tier list. Now, obviously this was made for the Battle Royale. However, this is pretty standard across all of the game modes, which means that even though some of these won't be available in Squad or Lone Wolf, you can absolutely use this as a reference guide and honestly take a screenshot. I mean, I'm gonna be using this myself so that when I'm playing, I know which guns are gonna be the best. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you guys subscribe for more Free Fire content right here, and you can check out my other channels here as well. I've got another video for Free Fire right there, and yeah, I'd also love to know what other kind of Free Fire content you guys would be interested in watching, so leave a comment in the section below letting me know that. I'm just getting this channel started, so honestly, I would really love to know your guys' feedback, so let me know. For now, this is KairosTime ticking by, and we will see you in Free Fire.